this thing on? Because it's getting ready to be on.
Hello and welcome to Bell Ringer. My name is Greg. Your guest name today is Kyle Ciminelli from Ciminelli Real Estate and Newmark Ciminelli. Throughout the episode, we talk about Buffalo architecture, the office space scene here locally, Kyle's move back from New York City, and what company decision makers are looking for both in commercial and industrial real estate when they're considering an expansion or relocation, as well as more oncoming industrial real estate right here in Buffalo, thanks in part to Ciminelli Real Estate. Thanks so much for listening.
So Ciminelli Real Estate Corp's pretty unique in that it's really a full service real estate company. And what I mean by that is we offer a wide range of services, anywhere from our development services to our investor services and capital management, to our TI department, which handles build outs of office space and so forth, to our property management department, who currently has about 12 million square feet of property management assignments across Western New York, Massachusetts, and Florida. So we really handle the wide spectrum of real estate for our clients and really solve all the needs for our clients if needed. And obviously, some clients only need some things while other clients need others. And then there's the brokerage end of things, which until I came to Ciminelli, really the main role of the brokerage group was to fill keep the family portfolio and some of our other buildings filled. So really just representing landlords and so forth. But with my return home in 2019 and our new affiliation with the global brand Newmark, we now focus on a lot more consultation and tenant representation. So we're on the other sides of the deals a lot. We're working with tenants a lot. We're doing a lot of consulting work and so forth. So really adds another level of service to an already pretty robust service lines.
Right. And then locally here in Buffalo, I think you have some pretty, prominent buildings that people would recognize. And I think it parlays kind of nicely into some of Buffalo's strengths in architecture and even adaptive reuse projects that have kind of helped spur the renaissance that we've seen. So tell the audience a bit about just a few of the projects you represent and, your point of view on some of those strengths that Buffalo possesses.
Sure. So, one of the most recent projects that we're very proud of, and we just won the Golden Brick Award at the Business First event, Brick by Brick, a couple weeks ago, is our ground up development over at 201 Allocate. And this we think is a really important development for the city of Buffalo because it checks a lot of boxes. First, affordability, really high quality, affordable housing, 201 units. When I think of these units as affordable compared to some of the stuff I lived in New York City, it's amazing because it's really quality housing, and it was much needed in a central business district location. But maybe even more important, we've now checked the box of bringing a market to downtown Buffalo. And you think about some of the things that make an environment 24/7. Checking that market box and having somewhere that people can walk to and get fresh produce and groceries and so forth was really an important piece of the puzzle. I think back to my years in New York City when Manhattan was trying to make the financial district more 24/7 and not just a business environment. And the first thing that they did was brought down a Whole Foods there. So I think of it very similarly, and hopefully that can be one of the boxes that we've checked that helps the continued evolution in 24/7 of our central business district. So first and foremost, I want to highlight that project. We're really proud of it, but we've done some other historical, some residential projects that were actually done prior to me getting to Ciminelli. Mentholatum over on Niagara Street being one of them. Really great, incredible older building that was converted to loft apartments with great views and amenities and so forth. We have a project over down near the UB South Campus on Hurdle and Main, Bethune, very similar, old industrial building converted to some really cool loft apartments and so forth. So we have had some success in some of those residential conversions with older buildings as of late.
Yeah. And you mentioned in there, you came back to Buffalo and to a role with Ciminelli in 2019. Obviously, a lot in the real estate landscape has changed since then, especially because of the pandemic. So I wanted to touch a little bit about that now that we're, 2+ years into
Yeah.
or out of the pandemic, however you look at it. How do you think as a leader in the space, like the world of office space has changed both culturally and like architecturally, how they're designed when people are in them?
Yeah, definitely an interesting time to move back with your family at the end of 2019. I have a wife who's not from Buffalo, and she was back and we just had a child, and then all of a sudden the world shut down. So definitely a very interesting time to move back. Being in the office space world, obviously my opinion is slightly biased, but I think if you look at where we came from March 2020, say really spring through 2020, when the general feeling out there was the need for office space is gone. We're doing great. Everyone's doing great remotely. We're blocking, we're tackling. Why do we need to pay all this money for office space? And that was sort of the sentiment. And I think as the pandemic went on, the pendulum started to swing back the other way, and realized you can really only do that. And again, this isn't the same. There's a gray area. This isn't the same answer for every company. We all have our own ability to do things remotely, and vice versa. But I think the pendulum started to swing the other way, and we thought, okay, well, office space needs to be here in some capacity. So let's try and think about what that looks like. And I think even today, we've made some big strides in sort of defining what office space looks like, but there's still a lot of uncertainty. But the key component to all of it is flexibility financially, and flexibility from a workplace strategy standpoint. So you really, if you're going to make a long-term decision on your real estate today, you need to build in that flexibility, because you don't know where the world's going to lead. You need to be able to contract and expand. You need to be able to add amenities or take away amenities that may become valuable for recruitment and so forth. So I think for the positive aspect of it is that I think companies are realizing they need real estate in some capacity, and maybe considerably less, but it's still in some capacity. And it's there, even if it's a smaller portion of space that they're ultimately taking, what we're seeing both here and in other regions where we're doing business is that tenants are more willing to put money into their space, because if they're going to invest in space, they want to be able to do it in a way to make people motivated to get out of the house and come into work. So how are they doing that? They're going into, if you look at where really the activity is in Buffalo and in other markets right now, it's in the higher end buildings. There's been a flight to quality, because like I said before, you want to give employees a reason to want to come into the office. So you want to be in a building with the amenities, the health, the food, just all the amenities that come with, say, a Seneca One or a Fountain Plaza, or some of these buildings that really have a full work, live, and play environment. And I think that's important. But it's also important for the employers to design space within those buildings similarly, and that they're giving people reasons that they have to leave home, or they're giving them things that they can do in the office that they can't do them at home, and so forth. So, I think we were in a world a couple of years ago where we were trying to figure out how to make our homes more like our offices, and I think we're gravitating more towards a world now where we're trying to motivate ourselves to make our offices more like our homes.
Right. So obviously in our world at Buffalo Niagara, helping companies expand, or relocate to new regions, companies' real estate decision is kind of paramount in that process. For you both, I mean, you talked about on the brokerage side, representing tenants, but also just in the real estate space, you mentioned that high level real estate, whether it's a Seneca One or a Fountain Plaza, but what advantages do you think Buffalo has to offer to, a company that's specifically looking for office space as opposed to industrial, that would entice them to want to relocate to Buffalo?
Well, I think we've proven that we're able to recruit a lot of talent. So that was an uncertain thing a few years ago, and I think M&T, ACV, Odoo, a lot of the newer companies that are coming here are proving that wrong, and the talent is here and they're finding it. So that's nice to see, and that's really been motivating for all of us. Obviously, the cost of living, you can't compare. The ease of living, that was one of the bigger draws for me coming back from New York, is that the grind isn't for everyone anymore. You really, Buffalo has a really easy way of living. There's not much traffic. We've got great restaurants, we've got great neighborhoods, we've got great suburbs. It's just a really, in a way, easy place to live and raise a family, with great school districts and so forth. So the ease of living and the low cost of living, I think, are huge drivers. And then, the camaraderie that you have in this town, I think you see when we try and recruit other companies here, they feel it immediately. And it's definitely unique, and we can talk about it. And we do tell other companies about it, and oh yeah, we hear about it, it's great. But until you get here and you feel it, I mean, it's pretty instant. So there's a lot of things that I think, and really location too. We're so close to some of the bigger markets. Only 90 miles away from Toronto, which is a thriving market, and everything south of Toronto and so forth. So we're much more of a central location for businesses too, that I think people realize sometimes.
And then on the industrial side, we're recording this on August 17th. It should be out actually later today, but just yesterday, there's a piece in the Buffalo News about Ciminelli and spec development at Renaissance Commerce Park, which would be, I think, the third spec development at that park. Just tell us a bit about, that exciting announcement, the decision-making process, the why and all of that stuff.
Sure. So coincidentally, when I was coming back and making the transition back after 17 years at Newmark in New York City, working in their headquarters, I moved back in 2019, as you mentioned earlier. And it was just a complete coincidence that right at that time frame, Invest Buffalo had engaged or hired Newmark's industrial consulting group to really analyze the region. So those things were literally happening at the same time. Now, I'll admit right off the bat, I did not have much experience in industrial real estate in Manhattan in my career there. There just wasn't. I was more of an office development guy there. But Ciminelli and my colleagues here does have a long history in developing industrial real estate, going back to Arrow Drive days and stuff over there and so forth. So we became immediately engaged with our folks and our colleagues from Newmark and really understanding what this region needs, just like a lot of other developers did, and you guys helped promote and so forth. And we saw the need like everybody else. We're getting passed on by a lot of large national users because we don't have the shovel ready, or even more importantly, spec development for industrial. So we've worked hard in really analyzing the region with our Newmark colleagues and so forth, and we dove headfirst into this RFP for Parcel 2 of Renaissance Commerce Park. We really talked a lot about how we're going to utilize our national tentacles with Newmark to bring additional focus onto these sites and our site specifically and so forth. So I think that was a big reason why we were awarded the site. But we're really excited about it. It'll be our first industrial development in quite some time. And we're really excited to work with our colleagues across the country and at Newmark and really trying to, bring the demand and the eyes on this type of development.
What do you think about Buffalo's resurgence has contributed to, now a few developers kind of going further into spec development? Because it's kind of like a risk aversion question, but to see Buffalo thriving and actually having those opportunities, how much more enticing does it make it for a developer, and just kind of gives you, like, I guess, ease of mind in the process?
So you're really only seeing the spec development in the industrial sector, given the national demand. Obviously, you're not seeing spec office buildings or really much other spec development going on. And I think it just took a lot to convince the developers and the other players in town that it's not. We need to look at Buffalo differently from an industrial standpoint. And given that we are a central location, and we can't look at it as typical Buffalo and so forth, and thinking that we're never going to get the demand because of who we are. But realizing then when we look at other comparable cities across the country that have success with this type of product, we thought, well, if they can do it, why can't we? So it was sort of taking down the boundaries and realizing that if we do build this type of product, we will get the looks from the nationals. We will get the looks from all these big high credit tenants that are looking at certain in different regions and so forth. It took a lot for us to believe in that, and that we were going to get bypassed just because we were Buffalo. So I think we're now convinced, and we're starting to see the national users, and a lot of them coming through you guys, pop around and so forth. So we feel confident about it now. We've already had interest just from the news articles coming out from users nationally, coming and asking us what we could build for them there. So there's a decent chance we may have someone before we even put a shovel in the ground.
Hopefully more coming after we
Yeah.
publish this podcast.
Exactly.
We've mentioned a few times you moved away, lived in New York City for a bunch of years and have come back. So from your point of view as someone that lived here, lived somewhere else and now is back, how do you, through your eyes, how do you see this city? How has it changed? What's the resurgence like as someone, that was, I guess now a repat, we would call you.
Repat. I like that. So I was gone for 20 years, and I'm 40 years old now. So it's now half of my life I was in New York City. But I have to say, I still woke up every morning in those 20 years and read Business First, the Buffalo News, and Buffalo Rising is my first three things I would read every day. So I was still very much interested in the growth of Buffalo, still worked with a lot of companies throughout Buffalo as I was in New York. In fact, for a while, for about 17 years, I helped Goldberg Segal open up pretty much every single one of their offices across the country and so forth. So really still took a real interest in Buffalo's growth and so forth. And I think what I started to see, and it was really probably every year when I came back for the 43 North event, and the energy around 43 North and the young business leaders that are now here. And I think it's the tech world that has done a lot for this resurgence. It's not everything. Obviously, you're seeing the industrial push and everything else also, but it was the tech world and the, originally John Gavigan and Jordy Levy and everything that they did for 43 North. And that involvement is really what excited me most. I worked with a lot of tech companies throughout New York City and helped them grow, and saw the growth of like Midtown South, which was a dead area forever, when I started in 2004. But then saw tech companies sort of redevelop that entire area of creative old buildings and so forth, and sort of saw it on a smaller scale that's happening in Buffalo, and thought, I really want to be a part of this. This is now something I can jump on board with. You've got a lot of young rising executives and leaders that have a different view of what Buffalo can be. And a lot of it's centered around that 43 North ecosystem. And that's probably the main thing that ultimately drew me back at the end of the day. Our company also moved downtown from the suburbs in 2017, 18. So that was a big draw. I'd always said, I really don't want to, as much as I love Amherst, I grew up there, I don't want to come back and be in a suburb. I want to be part of the resurgence of downtown Buffalo.
Awesome. Well, we're excited and lucky that you chose to come back. Thank you very much for your time on the pod. Before I let you go, we always end on a couple hard-hitting blizzard round questions. So if you were a flavor of ice cream, what flavor would you be?
Oh man, probably a soft custard or a soft twist, because of my indecisiveness always going between vanilla and chocolate. I like to check both those boxes.
Okay,
good. And I'm a soft serve guy also.
Normally what I go with as well. How about a book or TV show that you'd recommend?
This is probably somewhat. This one might be obvious to you, but the most recent show on WeWork, We Crashed, I found very interesting. That's a world I lived in. We did a lot of work with WeWork for about a decade in New York City, so I saw the ebbs and flows. So seeing that, watching that, and really seeing how that did set the blueprint for the evolution of flex and co-working and so forth. Even though it was a failure in some instance, it really did. I mean, I saw an article the other day. It said that was WeWorks to co-working like AOL was to the internet at the end of the day. And I think we're going to look at it like that. Even though, what we're doing in our office spaces, even outside of co-working, is really modeled a lot on what WeWork did initially and the experiential parts of it and so forth. So I really enjoyed that.
Super interesting. I just finished that show like 2 weeks ago, actually. So yeah. Pretty topical too.
Yeah.
How about hiking or skiing?
I love both. I have to say I like skiing. I'd probably choose skiing though. Big skier. But just got back from a hiking trip with my father in the Adirondacks a couple of weeks ago.
Okay. How about text or phone call?
Phone call. A little bit old school, even though it's my age. Still love to be able to speak.
How about Bills or Sabres?
Tough one, but I gotta go Bills.
Seems like an easier choice nowadays,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
Sabres are bouncing back.
they
And
are.
how about last question, most important, chicken wings? Do you prefer a drumstick or a flat?
Flat with blue cheese. I mean, come on, I'm from Buffalo. I can't have any other answer than that, right?
Easy. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you very much for all your time. I really appreciate it.
Greg, thank you. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
Bellringer is a podcast by Invest Buffalo Niagara, the region's nonprofit, privately funded economic development organization, bringing new jobs for our neighbors and new investment for our neighborhoods. Come grow your business with us.